time. Millionaire LPG babe with news from stats. All before that no Forest blade. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by just myself, Greg Oram, this morning, as unfortunately my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray, has gone down ill. So I'm flying solo on this one. It's nearly a whole year since Richard and I came together to create Talking Reds, and it's been a quite unbelievable ride with a whole host of fabulous guests and contributors joining us on over 80 episodes throughout this incredible Premier League season for Nottingham Forest. All the way back at the start, there was just one person who was quite literally the dream guest for me personally. And today that dream becomes a reality as he joins us for this special episode. He's a man with a stellar career in stand-up comedy, radio and television, with critically acclaimed sellout tours featuring his brilliant political satire and fabulous impersonations, as well as a multitude of TV appearances, including Spitting Image and the Royal Varity Show. Famous also for his hosting his own podcast, The Political Party, as well as British Scandal with Alice Levine and Down the Dog with Jon Richardson. The one thing that is most striking about him is that he's actually just a normal, regular bloke who has such a love and diehard passion for Forest that quite literally it makes him one of our own. So please sit back and enjoy the One with Matt Forde.
Sends it forward to Elanga. Elanga forward for Wood. Inside left channel. Great shot! No! Forest are ahead! It's Chris Wood! The first time they've remotely threatened the Liverpool penalty.
Matt Forde, welcome to Talking Reds. It's fabulous to have you with us. How are you, sir?
I'm great. That was a very kind introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We like to try and make sure that we greet guests in the best possible way. And I will be honest with you. You know, you're a man that I've admired for quite a while. I listen to a lot of the stuff you do, your podcasts. I'm a big fan of British Scandal. I have to be honest with you. I love that podcast. So knowing that you're a Forest fan, you know, when we first started Talking Reds, it was, I'd love to have Matt Forde come on. That would be just great. Almost as good as having one of the players come on. So thrilled that you're here today. Thank you so much for being with us. If anybody is watching along, please don't forget to get involved in the comments. Let us know you're here. We'll try and give shout outs if we can. If you're listening later on the Apple playback or Spotify, then thank you for joining us as well. I suppose I better quickly do this.
As ever, we're super grateful for your support. Please hit like and subscribe. Or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can follow us to be sure to never miss a Talking Reds episode.
Okay, let's jump straight into it. Matt, we start with every guest and we ask them, what is your own Forest story? I mean, I know you're from West Bridgford, so I kind of get why you're a Forest fan, but how did it all happen?
Well, I went to secondary school in West Bridgford, but I grew up in Sneinton, so I was I could hear the ground from my home. You could hear the roar of the city ground from Sneinton. You know, that's how loud it was. And my mum was a Forest fan in the sense that, you know, she didn't go to games, but she went as a kid. But really, it was my granddad that got me into it and my uncle. So I was born in 1982, so I just missed out on the real glory years. But by the time 1989 and those great Wembley visits, sadly, I never got to go to any of those finals in that era. But when I was growing up, Forest were local, were big. Cloughie was in charge. Psycho was the captain. So it was Italian 90 really that really got me into football. Gazza and obviously Stuart Pearce. And then from then on, I went to my first game in the 1991 season. We beat Sunderland 2-0 at home. And from that point on, I was absolutely hooked.
Was there ever a chance it could have been Notts County or another team perhaps?
No, I think if it's in the family, yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure at that age I would even be aware that Notts County existed.
Yeah.
Really, when you're a kid. I mean, I remember being like 8 or whatever, and you say, "Oh, you're a football fan." And, you know, you'd have a kick around in the park, and people would say, "What position do you play?" I didn't even know that there were. You're just sort of not aware of it. So I wasn't really aware of Notts County at that age. So it was Forest and football were just the same thing. Was really you're a Forest fan first and a football fan second.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how football is inherited from your mum or your dad or your grandfather. For me, it was my dad. I mean, my dad was from Hucknall. We've got family in West Bridgford, but I've always lived down south. So, you know, I've never lived in Nottingham myself, but, you know, it's my club and it's always been my club. And I remember, as you say, when I was 6, 7, it was Forest. Forest was football. I mean, I'm just a little bit older than you, so I'm lucky enough just to slightly remember the second European final on the television. And was fortunate enough to go to a couple of the Wembley finals. But Richard, who sadly can't make it with us today, his grandfather should say from West Bridgford. So, you know, he inherited that all the way across the Atlantic and is as much a diehard fan as any of us. So it's in the blood, isn't it? It's in the blood, and you can't explain it. It's just your identity almost when you're a football fan. It's quite tribal, and I think it's becoming even more tribal sometimes as well with modern day football. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think I never understood people who would just pick the team that was doing well to support. You know, the kids at school, and we can all remember periods where kids all of a sudden were wearing. I remember when Leeds won the league in '92, a couple of kids at school would come to school in Leeds shirts. I was like, "What are you doing?" And then it was Man United. Then it was Chelsea, then it was City. You think, well, you're missing out on that emotional connection to that place through family, through geography, that they're your people on the pitch. It means more. You don't just go, oh, well, who's winning? That's not just what sport's about, particularly not football that's rooted in identity in that way. You think, well, and that's why this season is so great, is because it follows such a prolonged period of it being absolutely awful. You think, well, this is our reward for that loyalty.
There's a few guys that come on our podcast that are based in the States. And, you know, they're American. They're not like expats. They're actual American. And they've found Forest in, let's say, the last 5 or 6 years. So they found him when we were in the Championship. So it wasn't even then an attractive club to necessarily be linked to. And when I speak to them and we have them on, they are so passionate and so diehard, and it's so amazing to witness and see that there are fans from overseas that have formed a bond with the club. And we see pictures of fans coming over sometime and getting to a first game. And I know that has sometimes ruffled feathers amongst the fan base when they see someone coming over from, let's say, America, and the club have kind of rolled out the red carpet to sort of welcome them and say, no, this is your first game. And I've always thought it might only be the only game they ever get to. They've come over for one-off, made the journey. I mean, the Premier League is huge. We know that. And Forest being in the Premier League now, do you expect there to be more tourist fans come to the City Ground, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's getting a ticket is very difficult no matter where.
Yeah, tell me about
it. So, once it's redeveloped, I think we'll see more of that. And I think it's great. We want a global fan base. You know, this is how, if you really want to be successful, you want to bring back those glory days, this is how you do it in the modern era. And I think Forest are really good at looking after their fans, really. And you see the stuff, and some of it makes it to social media, but the stuff they do with charity, the stuff they do with children, the Warriors United stuff. So I think they're really thoughtful about all the different fans that they've got, and they want to encourage people in every way. And I think if people have managed to get across from America or further afield, I just think that's really special. And I think it's a sign that you're doing well. And we want to do well. So one of the things that goes with that is having a global fan base. You think for years we were proud that, there's a bar in Madrid called Nottingham Forest or whatever. And then obviously now we're going through that. And hopefully this is just the start of what's going to be a wonderful time. I think it's really cool that people want to come from abroad. We just need the stadium to be updated so that we can get everyone in, no matter where they're from.
I mean, I was going to ask you about the stadium a bit later on, but whilst you bring it up, I'll ask you that now. The City Ground development it is obviously something that's been almost like an ongoing thing for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years as to what's going on. We have a good friend of the show called Matt Drewitt. He's an architect based in West Bridgford. He's actually a Fulham fan. He's a good friend of the show. And he keeps us updated as much as he can with his professional eye. He's reading all the information that gets published. And he was saying it looks like something is imminent going to happen in May. There's going to be some kind of YouTube event where the club are actually going to start putting something firm down, which is great news because I know that we do need to develop it. I mean, how important is it that the decision is to remain at the City Ground and not go to somewhere like Tottenham, in your view?
Oh, I think it's fundamental. I think it's the stadium is such a part of our identity, and there is the space there to develop it. I mean, I realise that it's a planning nightmare because you've got 3 different local authorities of different political complexions. It's tricky, but it really shouldn't have taken this amount of time. I think it's immensely frustrating. You know, we could already be in a 40,000 seater stadium if the process had been a bit easier, and that's good for job creation and stuff. But our identity, you know, it's part of who we are. There's no need to move. That was the main thing. You know, if we were hemmed in on all sides, you think, well, we've got no choice, but we're not. So staying there in that place, you know, the fact that when you go there, and it does need to be redeveloped, but when you're there, I thought this when Johnny Owen's film, I Believe in Miracles, came out, and I went to the premiere there where they showed it at the stadium. You sat there in the Trent End watching this film on a big screen, and you're watching this historical film in the place where it all happened. The main stand really hasn't changed since then. That's incredible. So you can feel part of the reason why I think we stayed up the last couple of seasons was the fact that the atmosphere was so crucial. You wouldn't have had that in a new stadium. So you could actually make the case that without the City Ground, we'd be in the Championship now. It's such a big part of why our club is different and why fans from around the world, if you're looking at the Premier League and you're thinking, well, who do I support? You can take the easy options if you just want to win a load of silverware. But actually, what the English game has, obviously, is that long history and effectively credibility to it. You can't find a club in the Premier League at the moment that's setting it alight like we are that also has a kind of underdog element to it, that credibility, that class. So I'm just so pleased that we're staying there. But it does need to, also it does need to be redeveloped. We can't keep, one, for revenue, but two, you look at modern stadiums, you think, man, going to football should not. Football fans get treated like dirt, even now, I think, in a lot of stadiums. A lot of football stadiums are appalling. You think, theatre goers wouldn't be expected to sit in those conditions or stand in those conditions. We're living in a world now of Wembley, of the Spurs Stadium, even the Emirates. It's a bit behind the times now, but it's modern, it's big, it's spacious. We're customers, and our loyalty is crucial to the business model of football. You're like, well, in any other walk of life, that loyalty would be rewarded with slightly more comfortable surroundings. So I'm glad that football's catching up, and I think you can see what they've done with those containers. They look great. They
look better than I thought they were going to look, actually, to be fair.
You what?
They look better than I thought they were going to look. At first, when they first started going up, I thought it looked like a bit of a block of flats, but actually it fills that corner quite nicely. And it's effort on behalf of Mr. Marinakis. Even all the fascia trimming round all the stands, the red and sort of filling in the sides. It does enhance it at upper level, but it's the development in terms of seating capacity that we need, as you said. We are going to talk more about the club, of course, whilst you're here, but I suppose it's kind of this change tack. And just kind of maybe get into a bit more about you, because we like to try and find out more about our guests. And obviously you're well known to everybody, but I wanted to ask you about the fact you're from West Bridgford. You went to school in West Bridgford. I think you said Snayton was where you were from originally. But was comedy always your thing as a kid? Was it always going to be, I'm going to go into comedy and performance? Because I trained as an actor myself, and I ended up being a drama teacher and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of led into performance myself, and I always knew from a young age that was an area I wanted to go into. But was it the same for you? Was it always going to be comedy? I'm
not sure. I mean, I would impersonate people at school, and then I started going to Just the Tonic Comedy Club in town and watching comedians from about the age of 15. And I'd always get the videos of Jack D, Eddie Izzard, Frank Skinner, the ones that were big at the time and loved them. But I just think those sorts of industries, they're foreign lands. You think, well, these are exotic places that it's hard for normal people to get into. And you think if you not get any of that in the family, you kind of don't understand what your route in would be. And I think there's also an element of modesty about it in a true sense where you think, well, I might have a go, but what are the odds that you're going to get anywhere? And I think that's a real life lesson is I think often we place restrictions on ourselves. You think, wow, it's not for the likes of me, this. But I gave it a go. I started doing it when I was 16, just did it as a hobby. I'm not sure I ever thought that I would get anywhere. And then I would do the Edinburgh Festival. Me and Jon Richardson would do a show up there that was just like a knockabout thing. And I got to know Russell Howard. And I was then working in politics. And they started to do really well. They were getting on telly. And I thought, actually, you can, if you put the hours in, and with a bit of luck and all the other things that you need in any career, you could get somewhere. So then knowing people that were going places made me think, actually, I should give this a go. So then when I moved to London, I really, really made the effort with it, gigged a lot more, started doing Edinburgh shows. And then from then on, I think you always think there's going to be a moment where an agent with a big cigar says, I'm going to make you a star, kid, and here's a big check or whatever. The reality is, it's just kind of incremental. If you keep putting the hours in and you keep trying to develop and improve and learn, a lot of it is just keeping yourself in people's minds. Just always, being persistent, really, with your own career. So you just incrementally, each year, you just get a bit more work. You play to venues that are a little bit bigger. You just get, a radio show here, a podcast there, a telly thing there. And then you kind of, you just incrementally, in a way, ended up with a career. But you obviously have to put in the hours in, I think is crucial. Is you need a bit of luck. You need all those things to go your way. But there's no substitute for really knuckling down. I will record my gigs, listen back to them, and that is an excruciating experience. Horrible listening back to your own voice. And, if a joke hasn't worked, trying to figure out why. But I think without that pressure that you put on yourself, I think it's very hard to make it, really. Or certainly was. I have felt that about myself. So I never thought that it was. Initially, I wouldn't have thought it was possible, and then it's just that persistence often yields the results. But it can go away at any point. That's, you're self-employed. You're like, well, you never know. You never know what's gonna, what contract may not be renewed, or what you just never know. And so you have to enjoy the good times, but not let them go to your head.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, did you get spotted? And you kind of touched on it. Perhaps wasn't that. It was a combination of working hard. And it goes back to the old saying, isn't it? That, it's what you do when people aren't watching that makes you the best. It's the hard work you put in when no one's watching, and all that kind of listening back to yourself and being harsh on yourself, being your own harshest critic, all that kind of stuff is what probably sets you apart. And you mentioned then that you were political. And that's something that you use a lot in your shows now. So how did that come about? Because when you first started gigging with Jon in Edinburgh, were you including political satire in your stuff then, or was it very different to what you do now? How has it evolved?
Different. Yeah, I wasn't doing political stuff then, which on reflection was mad, because I got into politics very young. I joined Labour when I was 15, and then ended up working for MPs, including Paddy Tippin, who was the MP for Hucknall, for Sherwood. And then I worked for Labour, but I always saw the two as like separate things. And then it was Jon and others were slightly mystified. You're meant to write about what you know, and that was a world obviously I could give a bit of insight on, and that I found funny. So then, when I moved to London and started gigging more, I was signed by Avalon, who are still my management, and Jon Thode, who set Avalon up, he just said, just concentrate on the political stuff. Really concentrate on that, and you'll get where you want to go faster. And that was just excellent advice. Rather than having a mishmash where it was like a little bit of politics and then other observational material, he just got me to really focus on that. And from then on, really, having a really good agent obviously helps in your corner. But they can get you in the room with people, but you've still got to do the hard work. They can bring people to see your show, but the show's got to be good. Just having a good agent isn't going to get the deal over the line. So it's that mixture of constantly writing new stuff and working hard on it. But having a good agent obviously gets you in the room, which is that's half the battle a lot of the time.
Are you in a space now where you can be a bit choosy with the stuff you take on? I know when you're selling out tours, you're really busy. You got more podcasts than you can count. I mean, how much stuff are you turning down at the moment?
I do turn more stuff down now, and particularly since I canceled the other year, and after that, I was like, I work really long hours. I tend to work 7 days a week, which is not sustainable, and but that's just because other stuff comes in. I plan my diary as best I can, and then because the tour's gone well, they add extra dates, which is great. But then they're getting slotted in on days where you've got stuff in the day. So then, I'm obviously not complaining because it's a great thing to do. But I certainly do say I'm a little bit more choosy now. I think, I do need occasionally a few days off here and there. And I think when you're self-employed, the temptation is to say yes to everything, because you always that fear at the back of your mind. You never know if it's going to end or not. So you think, well, I better do that. And then I'm slightly more discerning now than I was, partly because I think if it really doesn't grab me, then I'll say no. And the reality is if people want you, that'll last a bit. I think stuff never immediately goes away. And there's always other stuff, and as you say, I do a lot of podcasts. So I'm putting a lot of stuff out there. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to see or hear me.
Fantastic. I want to say hi to Tim, who is with us in the comments. Also, as well, Forest Line. He says, before the 3-0 defeat at Arsenal, Jon Richardson said the Forest bubble would burst. What do you now think of his prediction, Matt?
Oh, rubbish. I mean, he doesn't understand football on any level. I mean, it's really funny with him because he's obviously a slightly more pessimistic character than me. And he always wants Forest to do well. He's got a soft spot for Forest. He's gone to a few games with me over the years. And, Forest and Leeds are obviously with different reputationally, but similar sizes of clubs that have found themselves in similar predicaments at similar times. But he's all, me and him both loved Gareth Southgate, but he would whine all the time about Southgate. And now he's reimagined his own history as some sort of great defender of Sir Gareth. And I was at England games with him where he'd be whining like no one's business about what was going on. They need to be more forward. I was like, you don't know what you're on about. I don't know what I'm on about. But I accept that. I'm just a fan. I never try and be an expert on football because I've not played it. So I can't. You watch these games, I can't really tell a lot of the time what's going on in terms of what our possession is in and out of, what our formations are. And I can see the basics, but I'm happy just being a fan who wants to see a goal. And I think Jon is also in that area. He just needs to accept that he's ignorant.
You mentioned just a moment ago about your cancer diagnosis, and that was something that you have, or is something you've spoken quite openly about on multiple platforms. And I remember you mentioning, I think it was to Matt on Forest Focus, that Stuart Pearce had come to visit you.
Yeah.
Which, again, I know you even said that was surreal. I mean, it would be surreal for me, because the thing about you, Matt, when you talk about Forest, is you talk about Forest how I feel about Forest, which makes me kind of feel like, you are literally just one of the guys. You just, you're like a kid almost when it comes to Forest, and I feel the same. So that must have been really kind of weird that Stuart Pearce, the captain of the club, when you were first getting into the Forest and you were watching and he was fist pumping the Trent End, was now visiting you in your, well, probably your darkest moment in hospital.
Yeah.
Must have been really uplifting for you to have Stuart Pearce come and say hello.
It was incredible. And he didn't just, he would come for hours. It was real quality time with this icon. And he's a lovely man, and he contains multitudes. He's very well read. He's obviously, as people know, he loves his music, but he's very wise, and he was a great person to have there. He's really funny. He's got really good inappropriate sense of humor, really good at popping the tension with comedy, really. But just such a decent man, and really thought about this a lot, obviously because of what's happened. Football as a thing is so good at helping people when they're in a difficult situation, and not just, when you're there. I mean, is there anything as escapist as being at a live football match? I don't think there's anything as immersive that you could do, where for an hour and a half you exist purely as someone who is consuming that in the moment. You forget everything else, bills, family, whatever. You are just there, totally plugged into this insane, overwhelming, vivid life experience. And that's so good for you to not think about all the other stuff that's on your mind. So from that point of view, football gives you that. But beyond that, because football clubs exist on, there's the literal club, there's the ownership, there's the people who have to pay the bills of the club, there's the players, the management, there's the fans. And obviously, we're the only thing that doesn't change. We're always Forest fans, regardless of who's in charge, regardless of who owns us. And I think people really feel very connected to each other through that. And when you go through something like I went through, I just really felt that Forest, in every way, was really there for me. That fans that I'd never met were wishing me well just because I was a Forest fan as well. And that felt very emotional. And then people like Stuart Pearce were visiting me, and you think, my God, football does so much good for people. Forest as a club are very community minded, very charity focused. They really care about their supporters, and I found that out, and feel very emotional about it. It was a very cool thing that the club that you support, that you are there as a supporter of, you wish it well, you put your money in, they carry your hopes and dreams. In a way, when you're ill and they're then looking after you, that relationship is flipped. They're supporting you through something. And I never really expected to experience that in that way. So it's just such a... Football's incredible. And Forest are a very, very special club.
It's emotional listening to it. I have to be honest with you. Hearing you speak, because it just feels and sounds amazing and makes me really proud to be a Forest fan. And I'm so pleased that the club could be there for you at that moment, because it must have been really tough. I mean, it goes without saying, but you've come through it and you're back working and it's amazing. But has it changed you, Matt? And how has it changed you? And in what way? And if there's one thing you've learned about yourself through that whole experience, what would you say it was?
I think it's definitely, if you think you've not got long left and you kind of start bargaining with yourself about how long there might be. Luckily for me, they got it all out, touch wood, and hopefully it won't ever come back, and hopefully it hasn't shortened my life. But there's a period where they're trying to figure out what sort of cancer it is, and they thought it might have metastasized and was moving around my body. I just thought, man, I know that's bad if it's that. So I've had a moment in my life where I've had to reckon with my own existence and how I would feel about dying. And really, as in that it may have been an immediate reality. And that is a very powerful thing to have had to think, well, I might have not long left. And so I feel very lucky to have had that, because I think I was basically fine with it. The only thing that made me sad was that I'd not long got married, and I thought I'll really miss my wife. And that was sad, having to go through that together. And I found that upsetting. But apart from that, and obviously that's a big thing, apart from that, I was like, oh, well, we all die. I know this. And, from a young age, you start to realize that that's the deal. But knowing that and really having to immediately think that you might not have long left are two very different things. So one, it's given me a sense of peace, really. I don't fear death, because actually my conclusion was I've had a good go at it. I thought I've followed all the things that I care about. I'm very lucky to have met an amazing woman that I'm married to. That, Forest are in the Premier League. Oasis have got back together. A lot of good stuff. I'd lived to see these good things.
You've gone full circle.
Exactly. So then I was like, you know what? Really, I've always loved life. I've always been an optimist. So it's not that it changed my worldview in any big way. It has just given me that calmness, that in a way, not that the pressure's off, but just, we all die. It's not something to worry about. So now I'm like, well, this is bonus time. There was a period, a year and a half ago, where I didn't know what my future was going to be like. And also that's another thing from it is when I was told that I'd have a stoma and had to self-catheterize and there would be impact on sexual function, you think, I couldn't picture myself. I couldn't. I thought, am I going to be a vulnerable person now? Am I going to be scared to get public transport? Are there going to be big limitations on what I can do? Am I going to be vulnerable for the rest of my life? And it hasn't. You know, I've had to change certain things. I have to carry medical supplies with me. But who gives a shit really about that? You're just like, that's such a small thing. People go through far worse. People pay a far bigger price to stay alive than I have. So I feel actually that really I got pretty lucky. So I just love life, and that is a nice feeling day to day.
Amazing. I think I remember first came across you in the media realm, going back a few years when you were on Talk Sport. I think it was a Sunday afternoon with Jon Richardson. And I started listening to you. So I used to, when we had the dog, I'd take the dog for a walk in the park and I'd have the headphones on and I'd listen to Talk Sport. And I thought, oh, they got a Forest fan hosting. This is great. I love this. And I really enjoyed listening to the show. And of course, then you left Talk Sport and you went off into different areas. So that was the first time I came across you. So you've done radio at Talk Sport. I think you're now doing is absolutely, you're doing the show with the Dysonator, aren't you? A fellow Forest fan. You've got your podcasts, you've got your stand-up, you've done Spitting Image. I mean, there's so much there, but if you could pick one of them, what is your favorite thing to do out of all of that?
Oh man, I mean they're great in different ways. I think there's a purity to stand-up that's the real drug, really, is stand-up, is the feeling of standing on a stage and telling a joke and it getting a great reaction. It is the purest thing. That's the closest thing.
Drug. It must be like a drug.
Goal, yeah. It's incredible. And it's a natural high and it is great. And it's a high wire act. You know, sometimes for whatever reason, a joke or a routine doesn't work. So that jeopardy is part of the thrill of it. Radio, I think, is such good fun because you think, you know, you're doing Absolute on a Saturday. People are listening all over the country. They might be walking the dog. They might be plastering the house. They could be sat in the garden. They could be going to the tip. You think all these people living all these different lives and they're listening to us right now. I think it's a real privilege to have a platform like that. And to do it with a Forest fan. And we were doing it together when we were in the Championship because we were explicitly Forest before it was cool. Podcasts are great. I mean, I just think with podcasts, there's such British Scandal is, you know, working with Alice Levine, she's so talented. She's from Nottingham as well.
She's
like,
so,
how
I
I
know, she's funny.
working with all these Nottingham people. So you work with really the privilege of working with other immensely talented people that you really learn from. And I've learned so much from her. She's so funny, so quick-witted, and knows how to emphasize things. She's just such good comedy instincts. And so you think, man, this is great fun. We get to read out these stories that are insane, that are so well written, that you think, man, I just love, once a week, we go into a studio, we read some mad story from British history out. We have such a laugh doing it. You think, man, this isn't work. This is play. This is just so much fun. So they're all different things. And then obviously with telly, you know, that's another thing where you think, man, people are going to sit at home and watch this with a takeaway on a Saturday night, or you get to do something like the Royal Variety where you do the Royal Albert Hall and the King's there. You're like, man, those sorts of moments are great because obviously, if you're a football fan, I think you basically see the world through football. So whenever you've got a job interview or whatever it is, you're like, well, this is like a penalty shootout, or this is. So there are moments where I think, oh, this is like playing at Wembley. This is the closest I will experience to playing for Forest or playing for England. Like you can feel that big moment is adrenalized, and there's a stage there that you can either rise to that occasion, or it will be slightly anticlimactic. You know, and the work that you put in to try and nail that moment is, I think, probably the closest thing to football. But equally, it's never the end of the world. And I think that's another thing that I've learned from having had cancer and everything is before, I always thought, well, if this doesn't go well, I'm over. My career will evaporate. And you think that's just not how life works. It's better to have a good show than a bad show. It's better to have good reviews than bad reviews, but just write a better show next year, and that will create other opportunities. So it's taken a level of pressure off me, I think, man. You do have to try and remember to enjoy these things. So I love them all in a very different way, but I think there is the pure egotistical satisfaction of making a room full of people laugh is that those moments really are what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, having been on stage, not to any level like you have, but having performed on stage, I can attest that live audience feel is definitely unbeatable. A good friend of mine, and actually a good friend of Talking Reds, Alan Merriweather, he's the landlord of a pub called the Black Horse in Alston, and they have a comedy club there. And he says, "Come on, Matt, get yourself over to the Leicester famous Laughter Loft. I think he'd love to have you down there." He's a big Forest fan. He runs one of the buses as well, Tricky Tree Travel. Great. So if you've got any space in your diary, Matt, then the Laughter Loft in Leicester would love to have you at some point in the future.
I would love to do it at some point. I will absolutely do it at some point. No question. Yeah. Always good to gig for Forest fans. In Leicester as well. Brave man.
I know. I'm keeping an eye on the time. I know we haven't got you for too much longer, but we ask everybody who comes on to come up with their personal all-time Forest 11. There it is on the screen. Forde's Reds. I'll read it out for everybody. So this is your personal team, the ones that you've chosen for a specific reason. Doesn't have to be the best, but you've gone for Matt Sells in goal, back three of Stuart Pearce, Murillo, and Ola Aina. And then you've gone very attack laden. I like it. I've kind of done a formation the best I could come up with Gibbs White and Anderson and Reed in that midfield area, with Jon Richardson on the left, Anthony Elanga on the right, and then a forward line that would destroy and scare the lives out of probably anybody, of Stan Collymore and Pierre Van Hooijdonk. And one thing that I quite like about this team is that you've gone quite modern in terms of the here and now team. Sells, Murillo, Aina, Gibbs White, Anderson, and Elanga. I think that's the most we've had someone choose from the current team. But they are third in the Premier League in the semi-finals of the FA Cup, so that's no surprise. So why have you chosen one or two of these players? We haven't got time to go through all of them. Stuart Pearce, I think, speaks for himself. But I want to talk to you about the goalkeeper, because Matt Sells, I know he's having a great season, but you've been following Forest a good while now, and there's been some great keepers there. Why did you go for Matt Sells?
I think, if we were doing this a couple of years ago, I'd have probably, like the pre-Cooper promotion season, that it probably would have been an entirely retro starting 11. But as you say, this season was so good that really they're as good, if not better, than that last great side of the mid-90s of the Clark era. And I really think, Crosley was exceptional and obviously played for Forest in cup finals and had so many great personal moments. So he would have been my second choice. But we've always had, with the sad exception of Matt Turner, because he seemed like a lovely bloke, we've always had brilliant goalkeepers, like exceptional keepers at every level we've played at. I think Sells is probably the best goalie he's definitely the best goalie we've had since Crosley, I think. And I think this season he is so solid. And you think of the moments that he's had in those shootouts, some of the saves he's pulled off during some of those games, those fingertip saves, he is incredible. And I think so much, I think actually he was the single biggest change.
He's gone up another level, hasn't he, this season? It's ridiculous what he's gone from last season to this season. His level of performance has just gone up another level.
Yeah, I think bringing him in, swapping Turner out for him last season was really the single biggest change from the Cooper to the Nuno era. And that, stopping us leaking goals at the back kept us up. So yeah. I just think he's so crucial to everything. I just think so much confidence comes from that. It's the most psychologically vulnerable position on the pitch. And if you've got a goalkeeper, you see it when goalkeepers' heads go. Obviously for England, for years, it was a nightmare. People were having nervous breakdowns playing in goal for England. Whereas if your keeper is strong and solid and confident, and that you back them in those big moments. That gives more confidence to the defense. Like it, particularly when we're playing in quite a defensive way with low amounts of possession. You need a keeper that is strong enough to handle that pressure, and he is just out of this world. And he looks scary. You know, he's a big unit. I mean, he's like zero body fat. The cheekbones on the guy. You're like, he looks like a cyborg. You're like, this guy is serious. I love him. He's brilliant. He's a unit. So it had to be him.
Yeah, listen, no argument. The good thing about when we ask people to do this is there's no wrong answers, because it's very personal. It's what you like, or sometimes it might be you've had a personal moment with a player. We had the Warriors on the podcast, Matt. We had Helen and one of the Warwick Joseph on. So their team was made up of a lot of players that they'd interacted with, and they'd met for autographs and stuff. And so there's no wrong answers. Just one more player before we move on. Anthony Elanga. Now, he's obviously the man of the moment, isn't he? What did you think of that goal the other night?
Superb. Absolutely. I mean, the pace of it. And you could see the pitch opening up. You could just see, I mean, the technical abilities. First touch that is what opens the field up for him. He's got it under such control from the start. And then his strength. So it's the pace on the ball, which is incredible. The strength to fend off those defenders, the technical ability to deliver that shot. And you think, actually, I think he scores with his left foot. There's a point where he could hit it with either foot, you know, and you can tell the keeper's trying to wait and see where he's going to place it. He's incredible. And I think about this so much that for the last, you know, he was there when we were just dangling above relegation. So many of the current 11 were. And you could see that he was mega talented. You're like, how are we the fourth worst team in the league with Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White, Elanga? It just didn't make any sense. So it was obvious that he was exceptionally talented. I cannot believe Man United let him go.
Never can they.
All the things he offers you. You know, a goal-scoring midfielder with that sort of pace is as valuable as a player as you're going to get. And you know what? He's also, obviously, what he does on the pitch is the main thing. He's clearly also just such as a lot of them seem to be, very balanced about the whole thing. They're not getting ahead of themselves. They're loving it. They're really happy, positive people. He's a really bright bloke. I met him last year. You know, he's multilingual. He's got a lot of empathy. You know, these are really clever young lads. You know, they have to deal with a lot of pressure. And I just think he's phenomenal. I love him.
Fantastic. There you go. Forde's Reds on the screen. There it goes. Thank you very much for doing that for us, Matt.
Pleasure.
Okay, time is moving on. And we've got time just quickly to a word for our sponsors, the Cheese Trader. Here it comes.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Man,
The perfect cheesy mix. I know you love cheese, but I'm going
great.
to have to get you a care package, I think, sent out.
Oh my God.
The cheeses are incredible. I had some at Christmas and previously. It's amazing. So he's Forest fan, Stu Freestone, great guy. I'll have a chat and see if we can get something delivered to wherever you want it delivered to, Matt.
What more do you want? Like a Forest. I mean, cheese is up there, isn't it? With beer and chocolate. You just think one of the great things about life is that mad high you get off cheese, and then the incredible dreams you get. Man, amazing, vivid Forest dreams.
There we go.
The Cheese Trader.
We have got to do this now, I think.
The lightning round!
Okay, so normally this is where Richard would step in and it's his gig, but unfortunately he's not here. So these are going to come at you quite fast. We want a little bit of thinking time perhaps, but let's see what you got for us. Your favourite Forest player of all time?
Psycho, got to be. I mean, just the effect that he would have in that stadium. Yatesy is the closest thing to it now. A player that is absolutely plugged in to the atmosphere of that place. And he would conduct it. And after Pierce left, the atmosphere never really fully recovered. It's only been the last few years where it's got back to those levels and arguably exceeded them. And just, when you got a free kick and he'd step up to take it, he was hard as nails. He was Mr. Forest. It was just everything. Oh, man. Some of those free kicks were just lethal. It was you don't really get players like that anymore where you're like, I guess United have got Fernandes, but
yeah, but no one
take a free kick.
No one hammers it.
Oh man, rockets! Some of them were incredible. That one against Stoke when we were in the Championship in '93, he was brilliant. Yeah, gotta be Psycho.
Okay, what was your first Forest match live?
Forest Sunderland in the 1990-91 season. We won 2-0. Chettle and Nigel Clough scored, and I stood on the cop with my great uncle Joe. And from that point on was just, as a kid, you've never been around that many people before.
Mm-hmm.
You stood in a place with 20,000, 30,000 people. They're drunk. They're swearing. This smoke's getting in your eyes. You're just like, oh my, it's like all the overload of Goose Fair. and then these gods, people that you've watched on telly playing in a World Cup are there. When the action's down your end, you can hear them talking to each other. You can't get over how big it is. And you're slightly on the edge. There's something feels quite dangerous and edgy, even though obviously for a while it was, depending on where you sat or stood. But yeah, you're like, oh, this is, I don't know how people can go and not immediately become completely addicted to it.
Your favourite away or third kit?
Oh, I loved the one, obviously the yellow mad graffiti one.
Graffiti, yeah.
That green rare third kit with a zigzag that they reissued that I bought, and then I bought like an Umbro logo on eBay and then ironed it on to make it look like it was the original. I really liked the 91-92 away one, where it's the white one with the red collar and it's got the black and red kind of 3 zigzag things.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite jazzy. Yeah, those ones, I think. Very 90s
Fantastic.
Based. Oh, I like the blue 90s one with the crest in the shield, the Labats.
The away kit.
Yeah, big baggy 90s madness.
What's your favourite Forest moment or memory?
Oh, I think the playoff final now, even though it was a terrible game of football, I think specifically the last, 6 minutes that get added on at the end or whatever, those last minutes where you realised below the whistle and we're in the Premier League. And being at Wembley, we'd never played at the new Wembley, being there and seeing 40,000 Forest fans there are going berserk. Yeah, it would have to be that.
Amazing. So apart from Cloughie or Cooper, who is your favourite Forest manager?
Nuno, I think. Nuno or Frank Clark. I think the Clark era was great. I think it's Nuno. I think the way we play, the way he conducts himself, is brilliant because he's obviously tactically astute, but also he's got that emotional intelligence where they're happy, but they're taking it seriously, and you think that is perfect. He obviously is so good at dealing with them as human beings.
Yeah, and
he has got that great mix of he's really smiley and happy, and clearly looks like just a lovely bloke.
Yeah,
but he's also serious. You wouldn't mess with him. He's a boss. Yeah. And that's what you need. He's got that intensity about him. I love the fact that he can't watch penalty shootouts. I love the fact that he looks terrified. It's got to be Nuno, isn't it? And obviously at the back of your mind with that, maybe not even at the back, you think, imagine what the next few years is going to be like. We can really dream about stuff now. So it has to be him.
Yep. If Forest could sign one player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be? So we're talking your Wolves, your Bournemouths, your Brentfords, traditional non-top 6.
I'd say Rory Delap. I think he's absolutely lethal. I just think I'm so excited by him from an England perspective. I love Harry Kane, and he is arguably like one of the most lethal strikers that's ever lived. But I think Delap reminds me a bit of Collymore, those like Ben Van Hooijdonk, those big physical centre forwards who are a nightmare to defend against. And you think Delap, with the service that he would get from Ilanga, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, my God, the options he would give you would be incredible. Maybe Cunha as well. I'm always like kind of like loyal to. I think it's cool when there's English players that are exciting, because obviously it's not norm anymore. You know, they're kind of few and far between. So I'd go for Delap.
Fantastic. Based on what they do on the pitch right now, who is more valuable to Forest, Morgan Gibbs White or Murillo?
What are you trying? Man, this is a horrible question. I think Murillo. Oh, God. They both obviously represent the way we play, defensively sound with that.
I mean, that last ditch clearance off the line from Murillo on Tuesday night sums up what he does for us. Morgan pulls all the strings in the midfield. Which one's it going to be?
I think Gibbs White is so talented, it's hard not to pick him. He's so talented. He reads the game so well, and he can pick out, you know, he will often come so deep. You know, his work rate's insane. He's running and running and running the whole time. But it's that ability. He's so crucial in pivoting from defense to attack. And he can carry the ball, but those outside of the right foot cross-court passes, that one where he opens it up for Hudson-Odoi against Brighton, it's got to be Gibbs White. And I think for him, even the development of him while he's been at Forest has been incredible. He's grown and grown and grown. And again, you think he will be. It's so nice when it was the norm that you would have 2 or 3 players from Forest who were in the England side. Then it was none for years. And you think now with him, he's definitely an England star of the future. And I just hope we keep hold of him, because he offers you so much. He's brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got to be Gibbs White.
Fantastic. Last one then. Forest win the Premier League, but are then relegated into the Championship for the next 25 years. Would you take it?
I think I would, yeah. I think I would. If you win the Premier League, you've got that forever. That's something that can never be erased from your CV. And you think, well, we basically had 23 years in the Championship. It drove me mad, but I still went to games and still enjoyed it. And then
still going to support your team, still going to go.
Yeah, for the high of winning it. Yes, I would.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much.
I majored in lightning rounds. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Matt. Okay, so time is against us. I wanted to ask you about Forest this season. I mean, can you sum up your emotions when you look at the Premier League table? And there it is on screen, Forest sitting in third, 57 points. You know, can you sum up your emotions on the season so far? And also, in your answer, if you had to choose one between Champions League qualification or winning the FA Cup, which one would you pick? Who's been your standout player so far for you? Has there been a standout moment?
I think it's pride is the thing. I'm just so proud to be a Forest fan, and always am. But you're like, this is the world is getting to see now what the fuss is about, and I think that's something that's very special, because every club has its own history and own identity. But people around the world now that we're doing well, can see why there's such an affection for Forest. It's so good that we're disrupting things and going against clubs with far bigger budgets, that are state-owned, that have stadiums that dwarf ours. And we've been able to do it with the investment of Mr. Marinakis, but with that tactical genius of Nuno. And it just shows that life can change, that it's never over, that there's always next year. And for years, we just wanted to get out of the Championship and get promoted. And then you think, well, who knows? Who knows? And a lot of the time, those dreams don't come true. Sometimes they do. And this season is one of those times. It's far exceeded, I think, anything we would have predicted at the start of the season. I'd have always said FA Cup. I think silverware's the whole point, is actually winning something, is having that day where you lift a trophy at the end of it that's on your roll forever, having those big moments. So I do think that. The difference, obviously, is that the Champions League is so elite, and because of our history with that trophy, there is an extra magic. Obviously, if you win the FA Cup, you get into the Europa League, so you still get a European campaign off the back of it. But the prospect of playing, especially in the new format, where you would probably get Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, whoever, you think, well, that is very, very exciting. But I think I would go FA Cup. I think winning trophies is what the whole thing is about. Having a day at Wembley where you lift silverware. We haven't won it, obviously, since 1959. There are very few people alive that support Forest that will remember that. It's the trophy that I think, given that it's the trophy that eluded Clough, given that 91 FA Cup final really feels like an injustice, given the fact that Gascoigne wasn't sent off, that would feel like that was unfinished business. It would feel like there was some element of karma or destiny about that. So I think win the FA Cup.
I've always called it the Club of Miracles, and for obvious reasons, but it feels like when it really happens at Forest, it really happens. Yeah. It's like you don't do things by half. You're either shit and in the Championship and in League One and playing away at Yeovil and getting beaten in the worthless cup or whatever you want to call it, or you're flying high in the Premier League, and it would be just like Forest to qualify for the Champions League and then go and bloody win it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It would just be ridiculous. And I'm with you. I always think, look, like Clough always used to say, doesn't matter what it is, but you need something at the end of the season to show for your hard work. And that he was talking about silverware and trophies. And there's only 4 things that teams can win, which is the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Premier League, and 3 things, in fact. So it's like, why would you turn your nose up at winning the Carabao Cup when there's only 3 things on offer?
Yes, I totally agree. Do
you know what I mean? It's like, it always makes me laugh. So, yeah, for me, I'd say FA Cup as well. Matt, I know that we've got like 2 or 3 minutes left with you. I know you got other things to do, but very, very quick question without you giving me a whole blow by blow. Who's your player of the season so far?
Oh, man. I think it is Gibbs White.
They're tough questions on Talking Reds, Matt.
Gibbs White or Elanga? They are tough questions. I think Gibbs White. I think Gibbs White is so ludicrously talented. It has to be him. But obviously, Elanga is up there. I think Yates does so much for the side. Sells Murillo, but I think Gibbs White.
Brilliant. I want to say a quick shout out to WT Analysis. It's a great show. Matt, if you haven't followed WT Analysis on X, all of his Forest stuff is brilliant.
Great.
I urge you. He's brilliant. He dissects and does some absolutely fantastic after game analysis. So WT Analysis, we salute you. Brilliant work. And Mark Way NFFC, £2 donation. Thank you so much. He says, can't wait for Wembley. It's special. All right. One more thing before we let you go.
Name that grandmother.
This is my little segment that I always throw in at the end, and it's coming at you like this. Marmite, love it or hate it?
Love it.
How am I cooking your steak?
Medium rare with English mustard on the side.
This is the big one. Favorite cheese?
Man, I'd have always said cheddar, but I've really got into blue cheese, so I'm going to say Stilton. I just think it's such a strong hit. If you're having a glass of red and some Stilton, and you're watching old Forest clips on YouTube, you've won at life.
What's the best sandwich?
Oh, ham salad sandwich with some mustard on it.
And because it's called it, what are your grandmother's names?
Margaret. Do you know what?
This happens a lot. The second grandmother always gets forgotten for some reason.
Yeah, because I grew up with my mum. I can't remember. Margaret,
a great grandmother's name. Thank you so much for that. There's more that I wanted to ask you. There's so much more we could have spoken about, but I wanted to make it a tight hour. We've got no time. I know you've got to go. So, Matt Forde, it's been an absolute privilege to have you come on Talking Reds. Thank you so much for ticking off one of my bucket list moments, because you've genuinely have been the guest that I really wanted on, and I can't thank you enough for giving up the time to be here. Anything that you can quickly tell us about your tour before you go? Any tickets available? Where are you playing? Are you playing tonight? But I think I need to come and see you in London when you're next in London.
Yes, I'm doing the Bloomsbury Theatre tomorrow in London on the 4th of April. I'm doing the Nottingham Playhouse on the 5th of June. I'm doing Salford, Leeds, Chelmsford, and a few more places. But you can go to mattforde.com and get all your tickets there.
Awesome. Matt Forde, a true legend. We salute you.
Cheers, mate.
One day, hopefully, you might come and see us again if you've got time. But for the meantime, we're going to let you go and check us out next time on Talking Reds. Thank you very much.
Join Greg and Richard right here on top.